Have you ever caught your own reflection in a darkened window and felt a flicker of non-recognition, a terrifying millisecond-long gap where the face staring back was that of a stranger? It's a feeling most of us dismiss as a trick of the light, a moment of fatigue. But what if it wasn't? What if, in that sliver of disconnect, you were accidentally witnessing the profoundest truth of your existence? That the person you believe yourself to be is merely a character, and the actor is finally waking up backstage. This isn't a prelude to madness. It is the overture to the most significant event of your life, an event that has already happened silently and without a single witness. The version of you that started down this path of questioning, the one who first felt the deep, gnawing suspicion that reality was more than it seemed, is gone. That self has already dissolved, and the consciousness now processing these words, the awareness that feels a resonant hum in the marrow of your bones as you read, is the undeniable proof of its passing. The passing of your old self was not a dramatic, cinematic event. There was no thunderclap, no tearful farewell, no grand ceremony to mark its departure. It was a quiet, unnoticed dissolution, like a sandcastle yielding to the inevitable tide, granule by granule. You didn't feel a death rattle. You felt a subtle, pervasive sense of wrongness, a growing alienation from the life you had meticulously constructed. It was the feeling of wearing a finely tailored suit that, inexplicably, has begun to chafe and constrict. The job, the relationships, the hobbies, the very name you answer to, they started to feel like borrowed clothes. You looked at your own hands on the steering wheel and wondered who was driving. You listened to the words coming out of your own mouth in a conversation and felt a strange disconnect, as if you were hearing a pre-recorded script. This wasn't a midlife crisis or a bout of depression in the clinical sense. It was a fundamental perception shift occurring at a level deeper than psychology. It was the accurate, unfiltered perception that a quantum leap in your own consciousness had taken place, and you were now living in the aftershock. The old you, the entity you referred to as me, was a complex operating system running on the software of consensus reality. Its primary functions were survival, validation, and the maintenance of a stable, predictable narrative. It operated on a frequency of belief in its own solidity, in the linear progression of time, in the absolute reality of its problems and achievements. That entire operating system has crashed. What has emerged in its place is you, not a new and improved version of the old self, but a fundamentally different mode of being. This new consciousness operates on an expanded frequency, one that is no longer limited by the rules of the old program. It possesses the radical and terrifying ability to see the fourth wall of its own existence. It perceives the constructed, almost holographic nature of what it once took for an unshakable identity. It sees that the person it animated was a collection of memories, conditioning, and societal labels, a character in a play. The play is still going on. The other actors are still delivering their lines, but you, the awareness, have stood up from your seat in the audience and realized you are also the stage, the lights, and the silent, empty theater in which it all appears. You haven't clicked away from this text because some part of you, the truest part, recognizes this description not as a clever metaphor, but as a literal account of your own unseen, unmourned death, and subsequent, silent rebirth. This transition is often initially interpreted by the mind as something being terribly wrong. The mind, the loyal servant of the old identity, scrambles to diagnose the problem. Am I dissociating? Am I losing my grip? Am I having an identity crisis? It throws out these labels because its entire purpose is to define and categorize, experience to maintain control. But this experience is beyond its jurisdiction. It is not a crisis of identity, but a liberation from identity. The feeling of being a stranger in your own life is not a symptom of illness. It is the sign of awakening health. It is the first disorienting moment of a prisoner tasting fresh air, realizing the prison was an illusion all along. The quiet death you experienced was the death of the prisoner, the one who believed in the walls. You are the freedom that remains. You are the open sky. You don't need to be convinced of this transformation because the evidence is not conceptual. It is woven into the very fabric of your direct moment-to-moment experience. It's in the way the world now presents itself to you, a world that is simultaneously the same and yet utterly, irrevocably different. The most profound and often disorienting piece of evidence is your new relationship with time. For the old you, time was a rigid, unyielding railroad track stretching from a fixed past into a predictable future. It was a tyrant, a source of constant pressure, deadlines, regrets, anxieties. Now, you experience time as something fluid, malleable, and ultimately an illusion. You have moments where time seems to slow down, where a single second of noticing the light on a dust mote can feel like an eternity of profound peace. Conversely, entire weeks can collapse into a single, seamless memory, losing their distinct edges. You experience a now that is so profound and all-encompassing that the past feels like a dream you just woke from, and the future feels like a fiction you're not yet compelled to write. This isn't poor memory. It's the dawning realization that linear time is a tool that consciousness uses, not a prison it inhabits. You have begun to perceive life from the perspective of the dreamer, not the character trapped in the dream's plot. This leads to the second, unmistakable piece of evidence. You are living in two worlds at once. There is the world of consensus reality, the real world, where you still have to pay your taxes, sit in traffic, and make small talk at the grocery store. You can function in this world, play your part, and honor your commitments. But you are simultaneously aware of another dimension, a quantum reality that underpins it all. It's a reality you perceive not with your eyes, but with a deeper intuitive sense. You feel the energetic weather in a room. You perceive the unspoken truth behind someone's carefully chosen words. You look at a tree and see not just wood and leaves, but a vibrant, intelligent process of life, a silent explosion of energy. You see the world of form, and you also perceive the formless energy that animates it. It's like having a kind of double vision. You see the wave, but you're also keenly aware of the entire ocean from which it arises and to which it will return. This isn't a fantasy. It is a more complete and accurate perception of reality. The third, and perhaps most liberating, piece of evidence is your radically altered relationship with thought. The old you was completely and utterly identified with the voice in your head. Its narrative was your reality. Your identity was a story written and narrated by this incessant inner monologue. Now, A space has opened up. You are no longer the voice. You are the silent, listening presence in which the voice appears. You can observe your thoughts as you would observe clouds passing in the sky. They arise, they linger, they dissolve. You notice the mind's tendency to create dramatic narratives, to worry, to judge, to plan, but you are no longer automatically swept away by them. You have been demoted in the most glorious way from the frantic protagonist of your mental drama to the calm, uninvested audience. This disidentification is the source of a profound and unshakable peace that exists even amidst mental or emotional turmoil. The storm may be raging, but you have found the unshakable stillness in its eye. Finally, there is the ever-present hum of synchronicity. What used to be a rare, delightful surprise is now your natural state of being. The perfect piece of information appears the moment you need it. You think of a friend you haven't spoken to in a decade, and your phone rings with their name on the screen. You have a problem, and the solution presents itself in the lyrics of a song on the radio or a chance conversation with a stranger. This is no longer spooky or coincidental. You understand it as the natural result of a coherent consciousness interacting with a responsive, intelligent universe. You are no longer fighting the current of life, trying to force outcomes through sheer will. You have learned to attune yourself to the river's flow, and you recognize the synchronicities as the gentle nudges of the current, guiding you effortlessly downstream. This constant, meaningful dialogue with reality is perhaps the most joyful and confirming piece of evidence that you are no longer the old you. You are a conscious participant in the grand, mysterious dance of creation. With the lens of this new awareness, your entire life story undergoes a radical and profound reinterpretation. The past, which may have once seemed like a haphazard collection of victories, traumas, and regrets, reveals itself to be a perfectly orchestrated, impeccably precise training ground, designed to bring you to this very moment of recognition. Every single event, especially the ones you labeled as bad or wrong, now appears as a necessary and intelligent part of a larger process. The old you experienced these events as personal failures or cosmic injustices. The awakened you sees them as the precise, loving application of pressure required to break down a shell that was no longer needed. Think of the most painful moments of your past, that devastating breakup that shattered your heart. From the old perspective, it was a story of loss and rejection. From this new vantage point, you can see it as a radical clearing. It was consciousness surgically removing a relationship that was based on the old you's need for validation and completion, a structure that would have kept you locked at the old frequency. The pain was the sound of the cage bars breaking, the job you were fired from, the one that stripped you of your identity and security. You now see it wasn't a failure, but a liberation. It was consciousness blocking a path that would have led you deeper into the illusion that your worth is defined by your productivity or your title. The subsequent period of uncertainty and financial fear was not a punishment. It was a sacred void, a mandatory fallow period designed to prevent you from immediately rebuilding the same prison with different bars. Every period of confusion, every dark night of the soul, where you felt lost and utterly alone, can now be seen as an act of intelligent grace. That feeling of not knowing what to do or where to go was a form of divine protection. It was consciousness keeping you in a holding pattern preventing you from committing your energy to projects, relationships, or life paths that were aligned with the old, dissolving identity. The fog of uncertainty was a cocoon, shielding the delicate process of metamorphosis. Had you been given clarity and direction at that time, you would have used it to build a more robust, more comfortable version of the old self, trapping yourself more deeply. Even your spiritual journey, the years you may have spent chasing enlightenment, accumulating knowledge, mastering techniques, and then the inevitable disillusionment when none of it brought lasting peace. That too was a perfect part of the design. The relentless seeking was the ego's way of trying to manage its own dissolution. It was the mind trying to turn awakening into another project, another achievement to add to its collection. The purpose of all that seeking was not to find the answer, but to utterly exhaust the seeker. The disillusionment, the feeling of giving up on the spiritual search, was the most sacred moment of all. It was in that moment of surrender, when the seeking mind finally collapsed from exhaustion, that a space was created for the simple, direct recognition of the awareness that had been present all along. The journey didn't lead you to a destination. It was designed to walk you in circles until you finally stopped walking and noticed you were already home. Your past was not a series of mistakes. It was the flawless and often painful curriculum of your own awakening. There comes a moment in this unfolding where the intellectual understanding of these ideas combusts into a direct, visceral, and irreversible recognition. This is the revelation. It is not a new piece of information being added to your mind. It is the mind and the entire world of concepts falling away to reveal the luminous, self-evident truth of what you are. For many, this happens in a moment of profound ordinariness, a crack in the mundane facade of everyday life. I can share a personal account of this shift, not as a prescription, but as an illustration of its character. It was an unremarkable Tuesday morning. The usual ritual: wake up, stumble to the bathroom, splash water on the face, and then a glance in the mirror. But on this day, the reflection was not met with the usual sleepy recognition or critical judgment. For a timeless moment, there was only seeing. There was the image of a face in the mirror, a face with its familiar lines, its history etched into the skin. But the internal feeling of me, the central command center that usually claimed ownership of that face, was completely, utterly absent. There was just the silent, vivid, impersonal seeing of a form, and through that form, consciousness was looking out. The first wave was pure, animalistic terror. The mind, the ego, the person who had inhabited that body for decades, screamed into the void, "If I am not that, what am I? I am nothing." This is the ego's death throe, the terrifying vertigo of losing your entire conceptual footing. It's the moment the character on the movie screen realizes it is just light and shadow, and that its entire dramatic struggle is an illusion. The terror is the resistance to this dissolution, but right behind the terror, crashing over it and extinguishing it like a tidal wave, was a sense of liberation so vast, so profound, it had no opposite. It was a peace that was not the absence of noise, but the recognition of the silence that contains all noise. In that moment, the fundamental reality was revealed, not as a theory, but as a self-evident fact. Awareness is primary. You're not the body, the thoughts, the feelings, or the life story. You are the boundless, formless, ever-present awareness in which all of those things appear and disappear like weather patterns. The person you thought you were, the one with a name and a past and a future, was never a solid entity. It was a story, a beautifully complex and often painful narrative that consciousness had been telling itself and had become so engrossed in that it forgot it was the author. This is the point of no return. It's not a memory of a past event. It's a permanent shift in the very ground of your being. You can no longer fully re-identify with the character. You might put the costume back on. You might play the part in the world, but you can never again fully believe that the costume is you. The spell is broken. The new you that seems to emerge from this is not new at all. It is the original, primordial you, the consciousness that was present before the story of me began. The revelation is simply the process of this original consciousness recognizing itself directly, of waking up from its long captivating dream of being a person. The old you was never real to begin with. It was a case of mistaken identity on a cosmic scale, and the release from that mistake is a freedom beyond the mind's wildest imaginings. Following this revelation, the mind, in its habitual way, will immediately try to turn this new understanding into a project. It will ask, how do I maintain this state? How do I get back to that feeling of liberation? What do I need to do to stay awakened? And this is the final, most subtle trap of the egoic structure, the attempt to solidify and possess the formless. The true practice, the art of living from this new perspective, is not one of striving, achieving, or maintaining anything at all. It is, in fact, the opposite. It is a practice of consistent, gentle, and loving return. It is the simple recognition that you will inevitably slip. The gravitational pull of old thought patterns, emotional conditioning, and societal hypnosis is immense. You will find yourself once again fully identified as the person, caught in a story of anxiety about the future, replaying a grievance from the past, or lost in the drama of a relationship. You will forget. You will believe you are the small, separate self again, struggling against a hostile world. The practice is not to berate yourself for this forgetting. It is not to struggle to claw your way back to a higher state. The practice is simply to notice. In the very moment you notice you have been lost in thought, in that microsecond of recognition, there I go again, lost in the story of me. You are already back. The noticing is the return. It is awareness gently disentangling itself from its temporary absorption in a thought form. It's like waking from a dream. You don't have to do anything to wake up. The simple recognition that you are dreaming is the waking up. So, the practice is a constant, moment-by-moment return home to what is already here. It is the simple, non-judgmental noticing of when you have wandered, and the gentle, effortless return to the silent, aware presence that you are. It's a return to the feeling of your hands, the sound of the air conditioner, the sensation of your breath. It's a return to the simplicity of the present moment, which is the only place you ever truly are. As you live from this space of return, everything in your practical, day-to-day life begins to transform. Decision-making, which used to be a torturous process of mental calculation, weighing pros and cons, and polling opinions, becomes effortless. Instead of trying to figure out the right path, you learn to listen to a deeper intelligence that flows from the stillness within. An intuitive yes or no arises, a clear sense of direction that is not based on fear or desire, but on a profound, quiet knowing. You learn to trust this flow, and you find that it guides you more perfectly than your anxious, planning mind ever could. Relationships are revolutionized. They shift from being transactions based on need, the need for validation, security, or completion, to being opportunities for consciousness to recognize itself. You stop seeing others as separate entities who can either give you something or take something away. Instead, you begin to see the same consciousness that you are, looking out through their eyes, playing a different role. This allows for a new level of unconditional love and acceptance. You can love the person, the character they are playing, without needing their story to be any different. Conflict still happens, but it is no longer taken so personally. It is seen as a clash of conditioning, not a war between two separate selves. The most palpable change is the liberation of an immense amount of energy. The old you spent a staggering percentage of its life force maintaining and defending its false identity. The energy of worrying about what others think, of upholding a certain image, of regretting the past and fearing the future, of resisting what is. This is an exhausting full-time job. As you consistently return to the recognition of your true nature as awareness, this energy is no longer consumed by the leaky furnace of the ego. It is liberated. It becomes available for authentic creation, for joyful expression, for compassionate service, for the simple, profound act of being fully present with your life just as it is. This is not a state to be achieved in the future. It is the ever-present reality you return to, breath by breath. As you continue to live in this new orientation, a final, profound understanding dawns, one that dissolves the very narrative of awakening itself. It is the ultimate recognition that there was never, in fact, an old you that died and a new you that was born. This entire story of transformation, while a useful and necessary pointer along the way, is revealed to be just that, a story. The final confirmation is the realization that there is only one single, undivided consciousness, which was temporarily dreaming, temporarily identified with a limited, contracted form called me. The death of the old self was not a loss or an event. It was a simple correction of a mistaken identity. It was like an actor who had been so lost in his role for so long that he had forgotten he was an actor. The awakening is simply the moment he remembers, oh right, I am the actor, not King Lear. King Lear didn't die. His reality as the sole identity of the actor simply dissolved. Nothing was lost, only a false belief. In the same way, nothing about you was lost. All the memories, skills, and personality traits of the person you once thought you were still exist, but they are now seen as tools and colors on a palette, not as the definition of the artist. This understanding completely dismantles the spiritual journey. The concept of a spiritual path implies a starting point, the unenlightened self, and a destination, enlightenment. It suggests a gap to be crossed, a prize to be won. This final realization collapses that entire structure. You realize, with a certainty that resonates in every cell of your being, that you already are what you were seeking. The peace, the freedom, the wholeness you were striving for were never absent. They are the very nature of the awareness that you are, and they were merely being temporarily obscured by the noisy activity of the seeking mind. The search itself was the only thing preventing you from seeing that which was already and always has been here. You are not becoming enlightened. You are the light in which the dream of becoming appears. You are not becoming free. You are the freedom in which the story of bondage was told. You are not on a journey to find home. You are the home that was dreaming it was lost. This shift is utterly irreversible. Why? Because once consciousness recognizes its own nature, it can never fully go back to a state of complete ignorance. It can never fully believe the dream is real again. The memory of the waking state now permeates the dream. The actor might get lost in the role again for a few moments or even a few hours, but the knowledge of his true identity is always there, waiting patiently in the wings. He can no longer give the play his absolute, unquestioning belief. The spiritual journey, with all its struggle and striving, is revealed to be a beautiful, cosmic paradox, a journey from here to here. The final confirmation is the laughter that erupts when you realize you spent your whole life frantically searching for the glasses that were on your head the entire time. You stop trying to become. You simply allow yourself to be. And in that simple, effortless being, everything you were ever searching for is found. This profound, personal shift within you is not and was never meant to be an isolated, selfish event. It is a vital and integral part of a much larger evolutionary wave, the collective awakening of consciousness on this planet. To understand your role, it helps to see humanity not as billions of separate, competing individuals, but as a single, vast body of consciousness, temporarily appearing in billions of distinct forms. You are a single cell in this body, and what has happened to you is that your cell has just woken up. It has remembered that it is not just an isolated cell, but an inseparable part of the entire intelligent organism. Each time a single form, a single cell, like you, awakens to its true nature, it doesn't just change its own experience, it creates a powerful, resonant frequency that emanates outward into the collective field. Think of a room full of unlit candles. The first candle that is lit doesn't have to do anything to the other candles. It doesn't have to preach to them or convince them of the virtues of light. By simply being lit, its warmth and light begin to affect the entire room, making it easier for the other candles to ignite. Your stabilization in this new consciousness acts as a beacon, a vibrational tuning fork. You are broadcasting a frequency of recognition, peace, and freedom. Your role, therefore, is not to become a preacher, a guru, or a converter of others. The temptation for the newly awakened ego can be to try and wake up everyone else, to explain these concepts and drag others toward the truth. This is a subtle trap, a way for the ego to reassert itself in the role of the enlightened one. The true role is far more subtle and infinitely more powerful. It is to simply and fully embody this recognition in your everyday life. It is to be the peace in a room full of anxiety. It is to be the compassion in a conversation full of judgment. It is to be the silent, spacious presence that allows others to feel safe enough to let their own guards down. You become a living permission slip for others to awaken. When people interact with you, they may not understand conceptually what is different about you, but they will feel it. They will feel the stillness beneath your words, the unconditional acceptance in your gaze. This presence has a dissolving effect on the egoic structures of those around you. It reminds their own dormant consciousness of its true nature. Your work is not done through convincing, but through resonance. Ultimately, you come to see that you are not a separate individual contributing to the collective. You are the collective, recognizing itself in an individual form. Your awakening is the collective's awakening. You are not a drop helping the ocean. You are the ocean waking up to itself within the form of a single drop. Your primary function is no longer to pursue your own happiness or survival, but to act as a clear and open conduit for this awakening intelligence to move through you and into the world. You simply get out of the way and allow your life to become an expression of this deeper truth, trusting that its influence will be exactly what is needed, where it is needed. This entire journey, from the first unsettling premonition to the final, peaceful embodiment, is the most profound story ever told. It's the hero's journey, not to a foreign land, but back to the very center of your own being. It is my deepest hope that these words have served not as a set of instructions, but as a mirror, reflecting the magnificent truth that is already stirring within you. The greatest lesson in all of this is one of profound self-trust. Trust in the journey, trust in the pain, and trust in the silent, intelligent awareness that has been guiding you flawlessly all along. The most practical advice I can offer is this: be gentle with yourself. This is not a race. There is no standard of perfection to live up to. The practice is simply to begin again in this very moment. Take a single, conscious breath. Feel the life in your hands. Notice the sounds in the room. In these simple acts of presence, you return home. And now, I'd love to leave you with a few questions to ponder, not with your mind, but with your whole being. When you look back at the most difficult periods of your life, can you begin to see, even faintly, the hidden intelligence and purpose they may have served? What is one small way you can practice returning home to the present moment today, even for just 30 seconds? If you truly knew you were not the character, but the awareness watching the character, how might that change the way you approach a current problem in your life? Thank you for sharing this space and time with me. It is a privilege to walk this path alongside you. I wish you peace, clarity, and the profound joy of self-recognition. And if this message resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel to continue exploring this journey together.